When I was about 20, I went on a whirlwind trip all over the place. Now, I know it's been the custom in Australia to wait till you're retired and then you travel around the place. But I went overseas with 5 other friends, 5 guys. So it was 6 young, crazy Australians, bludging, surfing, loitering all over the world. Back when I was 20, it was just a couple of years ago. Just more or less, you know, give or take a few weeks. Now, we were all part of a big youth group, a church-based youth group, although I was in the church sometimes, the church, let me assure you, was not in me. I was really allergic to God. I went for the social life. A lot of young people do that. We had a good group of friends, and when we went on this trip, I don't know how really it came about, but it wasn't a pilgrimage. It was more like a big overseas party, but we went anyway. And I remember a lot of people came to see us off at the airport. We had a large group of friends. And I was close to several of these people. And I remember one of my friends, a lovely young girl, she was really getting upset that I was going to leave, and she was wanting to wave to me at the last second. We were walking through security, she's going like this, And it was difficult. We go through and we had to, that was it. That was it. And while I was overseas, it so happened that God, in his enormous mercy, like you can't really put this into words, but you know how sometimes people, they think they're being very profound when they say, I went searching for God, I got religious. Well, that's really nonsense. God is forever searching for us. He is knocking, he's calling, he's yelling out to us, and we're running the other direction. So finally I slowed down, and he caught me. And I had a tremendous change in my life. Like, I really received the gift of faith. And from that moment, everything changed. Everything changed. But while I was overseas, this dear friend of mine, she was in a terrible accident. And I'll tell you what happened. One night, very late, she was driving home with some friends, and she fell asleep while driving the car. And one of the passengers died. And I remember, I felt so sad. One of our friends, the mother, not the kids, the mother, she wrote to me and she said, please pray for this girl. And I remember I just wanted to come home, but I couldn't. By the time I got home, it was several months later. I was away for nearly a year at that stage. I heard through the very healthy Catholic grapevine. It's still alive today, isn't it? Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. But I heard in advance, well in advance, that she seemed to have drifted from God. And I stress the word seemed because you don't always know from outside, do you? Because when people are hurt and grieving, there's a lot of emotion, but you don't always know what's deep down or what will last. So I heard that she seemed to have drifted from God, didn't want anything to do with God in the church, and here I was swimming in God, or hopefully his grace was swimming in me. And then I came home, and I thought, I got to go and visit her. And I knew she didn't want to see me. But I went around to her place, and her mother greeted me at the door of the house, and she said, be careful. And as I went into her room towards the back of the house, I'd visited the place many times, knew the family. And I remember she was in her bedroom at the back, and she was doing something on the floor. She was kneeling on the ground, and she had her back to the doorway. And I came in, I knocked on the door, and I said, hi. And she looked very slowly. She knew it was me. She looked over her shoulder and she went, oh. She didn't want to acknowledge me. But of course, it was nothing to do with me, wasn't it? She couldn't open herself to me. And she kept doing her business, and I felt really awkward. I thought, what do I do now, I'm not going to sprinkle her with holy water, am I? Don't try that one. Never works. So what I did is I tried to make small talk. I talked about everything except the obvious things. And then over here was the white elephant, and here were we over here. And it was really, really hard. And then at one moment, she just lost it. And she turned to me, she said, "I don't talk to anyone about the accident." And I went, okay, okay, because I didn't bring up about the accident. But then for the next 2 hours, she opened up her heart. Somehow, he knows, she just poured forth a tremendous amount of anger towards God. And I remember very, very clearly, it was over 20 years ago. 5 years ago. 3 years ago. Is this being recorded? All right. And I remember very clearly the emotion in her face. And I remember her, the guys, be very careful. If the lady gets out the finger, you have to duck, right? The only appropriate response is, "Yes, dear. Yes, dear." She got the finger out for me. There was nothing I could say, though. She said, "He knew. He knew, and he did nothing." Now, I was young and foolish back then. Now I'm not so young, and hopefully less foolish, but I'm not sure about that. But I knew enough to know, don't say anything. Don't have a big discussion. Don't say, "but." Don't say, "Oh, do you want to pray the rosary?" No. She was so angry. And then she said another thing. She said, and I'll never forget this, she said, "I hope they put me in prison for what I have done." She felt, this is how it appeared, she was riddled with guilt. And she was furious. It seemed that God didn't care. Young people, they're not bad people. She wasn't drink driving, no knowledge of speeding or anything like that. Who has not been tired when they have driven a car? And she wasn't against God. She was hurting. She was like a child in great pain. And all she could do was just lash out. Why didn't he do anything? And tonight I want to ask you, why didn't God intervene? Why didn't he? Because he could have. He's God. Why didn't he perform some miracle or wake her up at the appropriate time? In what sense can we say he is to blame? We tend to blame God for things. And then what about our free will? Sometimes we put ourselves in situations like any child and expect our parents to bail us out at the last minute. "I've run out of petrol. Can you come and pick me up?" Well, why didn't you plan ahead? Well, you want to fight or you're just going to come and pick me up, Because the fact is, we are very quick to blame God and not quick to take responsibility for our actions. And every now and then we hear people who are struggling and wrestling with their faith, or perhaps they're not wrestling with their faith, they're just trying to put us down. They're not interested in answers. I've had many people who ask me questions and they don't care what I say, they just want to stir me. "What do you think about that, Father? Hey, hey, hey." And I'll try to quote something and they think that somehow they've got me, And I'm going to lay awake at night thinking, "Oh no, maybe God doesn't exist." Come on. There are people who don't really want to know the truth. They just want to pick a fight. Or they're angry and they just want to let it out. But the fact is, when people, they throw around very cheaply this thing, "Oh, look, all these problems, why doesn't God do something?" Or, "If he's so good, why does all this happen?" But rather than sort of picking on him, and he's like an easy target because he doesn't say much. He cops it. Why don't we ask this question? Why do we hurt each other so much? Why do I make such terrible choices? Why do I hurt people that I love? Why is it that I don't care about people that I don't know? You hear about people who have been in terrible situations on the news and the paper, and maybe you're shocked, but then you say, what's for dinner? Because you don't know them. But if it's your child, if it's your cousin, everything stops. You don't care about food, you don't care about money, you don't care that you left the light on in the kitchen. You just want to be with people that you love. This is the problem with September 11th. I was in Rome at the time, and I remember clearly because I know people in America. I had a relative in one of the buildings, the second tower. And after the first one collapsed, she rang her family to say, it's okay, I'm safe, before the second one went down. Now, you know what? I remember one of the big CEOs of a company in the United States. When this happened, you know what he did? He got on the phone and he rang all the executives and said, don't let anyone leave, not to the Twin Towers, but just in their businesses, because they didn't know what was going to happen. Because the person knew that everyone wanted to go home to be with their families. Everyone. You wanted to hold them. You wanted to tell them that you loved them. Because you just realized how fragile life is. Just like that it can go. You have all these plans, and I'm sure some of you have plans. I'm sure there are some of you here who hope and plan that I don't speak too much because you want to watch something on TV tonight at 8:30, yeah? And it takes you 3 minutes to get home, so if the priest finishes at 20 past, you work it all out. We've all got plans, holidays and Christmas. But many things happen, and I think most of the pain that happens to us, we cause to ourselves. So rather than saying, if someone is in a terrible car accident and the other one was drink driving and someone's killed, rather than please explain, because if I were God, and I'm not, so thank God that I'm not God, all right? But if I were God and you said to me, please explain, I might be inclined to say to you, you're talking to the wrong person. You need to ask the person who was driving, not me. Rather than say, what were you doing? Why would you do it? Ask that person, what was he doing? What was she doing? Because we're very quick to point a finger above and very slow to take responsibility ourselves. That's one of the things I want you to keep in mind tonight, is we have freedom, and it's a very beautiful but a dangerous thing. Freedom is the capacity to love. Because if you're not free, you can't love, because love is a choice, it's not a feeling. There's the emotion of attraction and pleasure, that's another thing. Animals have that. But as human beings, made in the image and likeness of God, we have free will. And God was very generous and very bold, and he created us free. Free to serve him and free to reject him. Free to love Cain or free to kill him. Cain and Abel. We need often to stop and think, Lord, we have sinned. And rather than just pointing to everybody else, when we like to blame God, very, very quickly, but he is innocent. And I am not innocent. So when you look at the cross, and if you're trying to wrestle with human suffering and pain, and it knocks us for six, and we're struggling with our faith, you must often kneel before the cross. You look at Christ on the cross. You say, Lord, you suffered and you were purely innocent. And yet people, they ridiculed you, they tortured you. We killed you. So when I'm upset, when I'm in pain, and some people have chronic pain, or stress or anxiety. Can we say that we are innocent? We have no sins to make up for, no penance to do? And taking it further, is it not fair for God to ask us to make a sacrifice for other people? He died on the cross, sacrificed himself completely for us, for me. And he says, can you just do a little sacrifice? Just a little one, just for a short time, not forever, and I'll give you eternal joy. Is that okay? And we are so quick to complain and to say, why me? And again, if I were God, I would be saying, why not? Why not? Why not you? Are you an angel? So you have to stop. We don't hear this very much because in the world, the thought is put before us is make sure that you're comfortable. Put on the fans, air conditioner, nice seats, good food, comfortable clothes. Buy and spend whatever you want. And the invitation is to be selfish, to fulfill all your physical and emotional needs. And the theory is, if you do that, you'll be happy. If you fulfill all your desires and all your pleasures, apparently your heart will be full and your wallet empty. Apparently. But we know that pleasures, they come and go, don't they? And there are people who we know who have a lot of pain. They have peace. And there are people who have a lot of things and they're nasty. Very nasty. Okay. I'll tell you about another friend of mine. I've got a lot of friends. I've got a few enemies too. That's all right. You win some and you lose some. The Lord had enemies. I'm in good company. Another friend of mine who I would say had an ordinary faith, okay? Quite skeptical. And then he was given an extraordinary opportunity to dive into the life and faith of the church. And he went swimming lessons, right? Really good. And I saw him bloom before my eyes. And he was running to the Lord. And then I entered the seminary, right? Some people call it the cemetery. Similar, depends. Some are dying to get in, some are dying to get out. You have a choice. All right? And I remember after about 2 years when I was on a holiday, they let us loose for a while, and I went to visit him. Big change. I remember I went to see him and he was very standoffish, very suspicious, and he was looking for a fight. And when I walked in, it was very theatrical. You know, he had the Bible. Doesn't mean he was reading it, you know, in prayer, but he had it on the mantelpiece in the lounge room. And I sat down, and before long, he just went up there and he got the Bible, and he said, I want you to answer this question. And then he opened up and he found the passage. I know the passage. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's irrelevant what it is. The fact is, he found a Bible passage that he couldn't understand, right? And he was angry. And then he read this passage out and he closed the book. And he said, so, I want you to explain that one. And while mentioning quite a few things, he brought up the Inquisition, the Spanish thing, and a whole variety of things. And then I said, my friend, what's happened? Because he was up here, you know, wrestling with these ideas and everything. And I went straight for his heart. Because I could see he was not at peace. I was so happy, and I still am. And I thought, what's happened to you? Why are you like this? And for quite a while, I talked to him about how he asked the question before I got to the Bible passage. And he kept saying, why didn't you answer the question? I said, because there's a bigger question than that. Who stole your peace? And I look back now and I think, and I want you to consider this with me very carefully. It was not a Bible discussion. I would say to you that for some reason, he was in pain. There was something that was not right. And often people use religion as an excuse to pick a fight or to have a discussion or to complain. Safe topic. But I promise you that when you consider people who have drifted from the church or don't pray or they're critical of the Holy Father and they like to condemn and say that we're all fools wasting our time, superstition, when they get very angry, I find very often, if you scratch a little bit beneath the surface and you push aside all of the excuses, you go deep enough, you'll find there's something there that really hurts.